That's working. There it goes.
Okay.
All right, shall we get started?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so I'll say the prayer. Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this opportunity to gather together as a group and to discuss this case study, and we're thankful for the education we're receiving and for the enlightenment that we'll receive, and help us to gain new insights and to feel the Spirit and to be led by you. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen.
Great.
All right. Does anybody have a spiritual thought or scripture?
I don't.
I can share one.
Okay.
So watching conference today, I really liked Elder Holland's talk. He spoke in the first session, and he talked about the parable on the mount, how it starts out like all nice, like, oh, be grateful, be happy, like all this good stuff. And then it goes into like, don't even think about sinning, don't even think about not liking people. You need to love your enemies and you need to be perfect, and how it just kind of throws down. And he says, I really liked it because he kind of compared it to, he's like, this is what you're striving to be, but we are, like he said, but we're all fallen men in a fallen world. So it's not that Christ necessarily expects us to be able to do all of that perfectly now, but it's kind of like a bar of this is what we can expect to be, and where we're not perfect, we know we're trying to be like Heavenly Father, and so He is perfect, and He does do these things. And he just talked about how all of us at some point are in a way an enemy to God. Just, when we make choices or we despitefully use Him without meaning to, and how He still loves us through that because it's in that parable, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And he says, so you can look at it as a comforting thing, like this is what God is like. So I really like that.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
Like that.
All right, should we move on to the case?
Yep, let's go for it.
All right, so it says, so far we have learned to evaluate business models of startups. Today we will examine the business model decisions of a startup in a mature industry. As a group, begin by discussing the following questions. Okay. Was the VC industry attractive for A16Z to enter in 2009? What was the competition like at that time? What was the typical fate of the new entrants in this industry? Why was this so? What were the trends in VC fund performing during this time?
Okay.
Okay.
Do you care if I start?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I guess I kind of think the answer to this one is yes and no. Because what it seems like it actually wasn't into, because they talked about how like the top 5 firms making 90% of the money, how there's a lot of people competing in that space, and how a lot of venture capitalist firms, new ones, weren't doing that well. So if you look at it from a traditional standpoint, in my opinion, it kind of seemed like a really bad idea. However, they were looking at it with a different paradigm. I mean, they had a different model they were going to do. And they kind of saw the industry, and they saw a lot of the weaknesses and a lot of the things that were kind of holding back the current venture capitalist industry. So I feel like their goal wasn't to enter the industry as the same type of competitor as the other guys. They kind of had different ideas, more innovative ideas. And I think if you look at it from that lens, it was a good opportunity because they were innovating in the right places. But yeah, if you looked at it from a traditional standpoint, if you just tried to do what everyone else was doing, then yeah, it was a very crowded, competitive space. What do you guys think?
I agree.
I agree.
I want to add that like theirs was different because they kind of had like a dream team. Like they had marketers, they had operation people. Like they had like a team of like professionals. It wasn't just like the normal, whatever they're called, or venture capitalists. Venture capital. Like they were different. They wanted to be different, and I think that really helped them also.
Yeah, I talked about that in the case, how they brought unique changes to the industry that it needed, and so that's one reason they were so successful, because the industry needed those changes. Yeah, I like to chat.
She's sitting with me right now. But yeah, I agree. They were different, and like I think a big part of that was how like they were made up of tech people. I mean, they were like former CEOs and tech startup guys who could see the flaws of the traditional model, and I think that helped a lot to differentiate them. Is that they were like, it's kind of like, hey, we're not just big guys with money who want to take advantage of you and just like screw you out, you know, so we can get the most. It's like, we know what you've been through. We get it. We get the industry, and we want to help you grow with like sincerely. So I thought that was good.
Well, their previous experience helped them a great deal of, you know, having been startup companies, done startup companies themselves, and then starting up this venture capitalist company. Right. So that, you know, they know what it's like to put in the long hours, to not have people slam doors in your faces, have things not go the way that you envisioned or planned. So they could respect the process because they also understood it, because they had experienced it. So it's nice to go. I think if I was in the position of starting up a company, I'd have a lot more respect and be excited to work with somebody who's traveled that same path more than once, rather than somebody who just, you know, got out of their MBA program and were hired on into this thing of, you know, here, we hired you as a consultant because, you know, you graduated from Harvard, but you've never really done anything besides be a student. So I would be more inclined to work with them just because of their previous experience.
Yeah, and also like the other venture capitalists, it said that they had like an inverted pyramid, and there was like more seniors than junior professionals. But like over at their place, they had like different specialties of people.
I think your microphone may have a short in it. Does anybody else hear it jumbled, or is it just me?
Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. It's definitely
I can get it, but it sounds really robot-y, choppy.
Okay, is it better?
It's louder, but it's still choppy.
It's still choppy.
I don't want to call you on my phone.
I think it's not. I don't think it's your computer connection. I actually think it's your earphones. I think there's a short in them. It's gonna start having a short.
No.
So.
Wait, I think I have different headphones.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah, adding on to what she said, I think that's just the gist of it, is that I feel like you can trust people in your industry that kind of get you more than big business guys. It's kind of like the movie industry. You have these big, giant, mega publishers who make hundreds of millions off of publishing movies, but they're all these businessmen. And a lot of times you see movies get hit really hard with really stupid executive decisions because it's made by these old men that just want to make the biggest buck. It'd be kind of like entering the industry, like running that publishing company. I feel like that's kind of what this is. It's people that want. I mean, obviously they want to make a profit, that's their goal. But I feel like it's genuine. It's not this kind of, I feel like they really are looking out for the people that they're helping to invest in.
Well, I was reading something when you just brought up the movie industry it was kind of from a tabloid magazine, so I don't know if it was it's necessarily truthful or not. But instead of paying actors out straight out, like how they have, Tom Cruise is worth $20 million a movie, other people are worth, lower denominations, that instead they'll pay them a portion up front, a small portion up front, and then they will have a percentage given to them based upon the success of the movie. So if what their box office numbers are, and then, beyond DVDs and all that kind of stuff. But I think that kind of incentive helps the actor pay more attention to like their travel, I can't think of what it's called. There's a word for it, but all their advertising and the interviews and like that kind of stuff that they do afterward, it gives them incentive to make more money. So it was kind of how these guys have been in this before. And when you were talking about the older guys are just more in it to make money than they are to do anything. They don't really have an incentive to make really good quality decisions. They just want to make the decision that's going to make them the most money, not necessarily the best decision that's going to benefit everybody.
Right. I agree with that. Any other thoughts from anyone before we move on to the second question?
No, we can move on.
Okay.
Do you not have sound now? Melanie? Or Madeline, sorry. Can you hear us? No, now we can't hear her.
Okay, yeah.
You can go back to the choppy ones.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, better than nothing.
All right. Well, while she's getting the other headphones back, next question is: with all the entrenched incumbents and catch-22s, what silver lining did A16Z see? How did they plan to succeed in this difficult environment? Where did they come up with that A16Z? No, because that's the most random name.
Yeah, good question. I don't know if I caught that.
I don't even know.
I don't think it says in here.
I just think that's the weirdest name ever. But anyways.
Maybe techie nerds think it's the coolest thing in the world.
I think maybe it means something with like apps or something like that, or computer programming or something. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I almost think it's 16 letters from the beginning.
Oh, you know what? You know what it is? It's the A from Andreessen and the Z from Horowitz.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Not that. Anyways, I just was wondering. But so, how did they basically plan to succeed with all the difficulties?
I think they plan to succeed by just being different. If that was the question, maybe I didn't hear the question right.
Well, it was like, so we talked about how the market was crowded. I feel like we kind of already like half answered to this in our discussion before, because the basically saying like, because the industry was so difficult, what opportunity did they see?
Yeah, and it's basically what Zach has already explained.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just basically to sum it up, that they just approached it differently, they behaved differently, they had different ideas, and that's what made them stand out and were distinguished among the other ones.
Yeah.
They were offering something that other people weren't offering.
Yeah, I think the reason they saw an opportunity is because they had been in the industry before, so they were able to recall their own frustrations when they had to go through that process, and I think that's why they saw it. So, yeah, I think we've addressed that pretty well.
Yeah. All right. So the next one is: does anybody else have it up? Because someone else can read these if they want.
I don't have my computer open. I'm sorry.
I can read it if you want.
Okay.
It says, why is A16Z specifically targeting first-time technical co-founders? How has the cost of tech startups impacted the VC industry? How has it impacted the need for technical co-founders to raise capital, and do these trends apply to other sectors such as life sciences or clean tech? It's a big one.
I can give my opinion on the reason why I thought that they went after first timers, but I don't know if it was necessarily what they said in the case.
Go for it.
I think they went for the first timers because when you have somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, you can kind of, or has never been down that road, you can kind of mold them to be the client that you want them to be, instead of having somebody who already kind of has experience and has done this before and knows the ins and outs of it. So I think they were kind of setting themselves up for, especially if these venture or these creators, there's got to be another word, were, people who wanted to continuously do this. Like it was like, yeah, let's do a startup company, let's sell it, then let's move on to the next thing. That they were likely to come back to the same people if they essentially trained them well and wanted that same thing out of it, that same process over again.
Yeah. I definitely think there's some merit there. I think obviously when you target newer people, it is easier to kind of do things your way. There's especially when you're trying to be different. I think there's an aspect of them being a newer company. It will be easier also for them to target newer people. And I also think they had really strong beliefs on maintaining the founders as the CEOs, because one critique they had is that people throw out the founders of the company and have business people come in and take over. I think they believed in the ideal of, you invented this, you're the one that wants to grow it and run it, and we respect that. So I guess those are my thoughts.
Yeah. Well, and I just checked the case for the next part of the question, where it says, how has the cost of tech startups impacted the VC industry? Well, the cost of a tech startup has actually significantly decreased, just due to the lowering of cost of software. And so I would assume that if the cost to start up a company has decreased, then the need for venture capitalism in that industry is probably decreased as well. Because, I mean, if you don't need as much money, more people can probably just fund it with the finances they can collect on their own without needing to go out and seek. I think it's called Series A investors.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't know, does anybody else have any
more thoughts on that part of the question?
And I don't know a lot about computer startup companies, but I'm, thinking of like Facebook and Instagram and, Skype and that kind of deal, of where right now, in 2017, with the way that computers are so high tech and, there's so much information out there on how to code, how to write things, that you don't even have to have, anybody with an education. I mean, there's 14-year-olds that are writing apps and submitting it to Apple and saying, here, I want to do this. And they end up, taking off, that don't need a venture capitalist to do anything, unless you need to expand to, have people working for you, like people who are constantly coding, updating things, working out problems, monitoring things, that kind of deal. So it almost makes venture capitalists obsolete in many ways.
I think there's a little bit of both. I mean, I think it's true that a lot of costs in the industry are lower because of the age of technology. The internet helps a lot of stuff, but I think there is also still a need for big money, because even if you have a lot of talent coming from a lot of places, you still have to afford, salaries for everyone. You have to be able to pay everyone that you're hiring, and you have to be able to oftentimes do research and stuff to build these great ideas. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think the venture capitalist industry is maybe seeing a little less opportunity than they did before because of reduced costs, but there is still, pretty big need for it. If that is, you want to launch like a really big venture, if you want to scale up. Yeah, because I guess there's some apps that can just grow organically, and just like get millions of people and still kind of remain the same thing, whereas other tech startups rely on a lot of infrastructure and connecting into bigger things and scaling really big. So, yeah.
Well, and the more people that you have using it, I mean, like Facebook, I'm sure that they have, thousands of servers sitting inside of a building that need constant monitoring because of that. Where
Right.
if you're a smaller, thing that has a million users on it, but you're, making money to make your ends meet and still make a profit off of it and expand a little bit, but you're not scaling up as fast, then or you're making the choice to scale up based upon your profits, your profit margin, as opposed to going out and seeking capital to be able to scale up a lot more quickly. It's just, I think it's the approach to it, or what your startup company is after.
Right. Any other thoughts, anyone?
Nope.
Are you saying something, Madeline? Madeline? I don't know if I can hear you still.
I think she's gonna text us.
Okay.
Sorry to make it so that you didn't end up. Oh no, she's not even here. I think she could hear us. I just don't think she could talk.
Yeah.
I should have just left it choppy.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Okay. I just called you on my phone. My question was, I didn't understand that last part of that question though, what it says, do these trends apply to other sectors such as life science or clean tech?
Right.
What is
I
it?
don't think it necessarily would. It might, but I think what was impacting the technical industry so much was the decrease in the cost of software. I mean, those industries might be facing their own kind of things that are causing costs to do stuff, but I don't think it's the same issue that people are facing. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. And the case doesn't talk about much at all.
What is clean? What are the definitions of those? What is clean tech and life
Like
sciences?
clean the environment, like go green.
Oh, okay. So we're talking about like
literally a different
environmental
sector.
Technology. Okay.
Different things.
Yeah, creating ways to do things more efficiently, like bring the planet less, new technologies.
Well, I don't think it would affect. I think when you get into like clean technology and clean living or whatever it is, those usually take product or something bigger than just having an app on a phone or a server in a building. You're looking more at like product development. So I think that's a kind of a different ballpark, unless you're having websites. I mean, almost everybody has a website now, but I think it's kind of a whole different game.
Yeah, I think you guys are on the money. With tech development, it's mainly, I mean, it's cheaper because the ways to learn it and to do it are cheaper than ever just because of the technology. So really all you're paying for is you're paying your employees. Whereas those other sectors, I mean, you still have a lot of R&D and you still have development and you have a lot of physical components. So yeah, I don't imagine those would be following the same trends.
Makes sense.
All right, are we ready to move on to the last part of question 3?
Yeah.
Okay. What choices do technical founders have for financing that they didn't have a decade before? I don't even remember reading about this.
I honestly don't even remember reading about that either.
I don't either.
Yeah, I don't have a clear answer off the top of my head. Okay, so what choices do technical founders? So they're talking about their client.
Oh, I don't know if this has to do with anything, but I know like their clientele, they're very specific about that. Like, do you guys remember reading about like if the entrepreneur was like late, they would charge them like $10 a minute?
Mhm.
Do you guys remember reading about that?
Well, I think they're actually talking about their own guys.
Okay, I'm just kidding then. Then I know that they were saying that they wanted like really valuable employees. Like, you know what? I don't even think I'm answering this right.
Well, I think it's like people in that industry, in the tech industry, founders of their own little companies. What options did they have for financing their startups a decade before?
Oh.
I'm trying to dig.
Basically, like, how has the industry changed over 10 years? I don't know.
Well, I think I guess 10 years before, if we're looking when this went in, when this company went in was 2013, approximately, 2011. 10 years before that, the internet didn't exist. I mean, it did, but it was pitiful compared to what we have now. So I don't think many people would have jumped and said, oh, yeah, let's go dive into investing in this. Unless I'm going totally off track.
I think that is a good thing now. Like, I think like what you just said kind of answers that.
Yeah, because there wasn't a lot. That's what it says in 1996. Microsoft launched Internet Explorer, which was a free browser.
And I'm old enough to remember that.
Yeah.
So I remember getting my first email account with Hotmail.
I remember that.
Yahoo.
So, I was in high school when the internet kind of became a thing. So it's, before that, it wasn't it didn't exist, I guess you can say. I mean, 96, yeah, it was there, but it was still dial up. It was, some of them, you paid monthly fees, but some of them you paid per transmission of data that you had, kind of like cell phones used to pay by the minute, rather than just having an unlimited plan that you could spend hours on.
I would assume it was probably harder to get funding back then or a decade previous, just because it was probably an unsure.
It was an unsure industry
At the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, putting money up for that, like, what do you think that with $4 million on the table, are you that sure that the industry is going to continue? I mean, maybe you would. I would hope so, because if you invested in Microsoft at that point, you'd be doing really good right now.
Right.
But,
yeah.
Well, and one thing I'm reading is I think a lot of companies, it's kind of what you guys have been saying, is that because of the internet and stuff, new ventures have a lot more ways to put themselves on the map.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of more ways to get themselves known, to promote themselves. And I think because of that, that also opens up more opportunities for venture capitalists and stuff to find them. So I think maybe before, it's kind of like they were talking about, you had like the top 5 venture capitalist firms that dominated the whole industry. And back in the day when there's less connection and less networks, they probably say like, oh, well, we got to go to these guys or we're screwed. It's like, those are our options. So these guys talk about building a network for the whole industry instead of just having 5, big gorillas who run the whole thing. So they talk about forming a network, which I think presents more financing opportunities in general. And it also says that back in the day, a lot of new ventures were like spin-offs from much bigger companies. So they didn't really need to put themselves out there as much because the big company was already behind their back. Whereas now you have a lot more independent developers and creators just like creating stuff out of the blue. Thus creating a need for marketing, etc., stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's one major thing that they offered was they were changing it. Isn't that what you were saying, Zach? Like they offered more, the A16Z.
Yeah, well, at some point they talked about building like a network.
Yeah, that's
Um,
they talk about that at the end when it's talking about those three things you have to do. The source pick win. How their main focus is to build that network for clients. Like they're not going to give you a producer or give you a person to go to. They work on building this huge network of all these different people in the different industries, and then they connect you to those people.
yeah, and I think, and that's actually something we hadn't mentioned with the previous questions. I think that's one of the opportunities they saw is that the current ecosystem didn't allow for a network. It was just, we'll give you money, and if we profit from it, we're good. Mm-hmm. If we don't, then you're useless to us.
Yeah, I put like in my paper thing that I turn in, it's kind of like to just give them someone to go to. It's like, oh, it's that saying, you can give a man a fish or teach a man to fish and feed him for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And by helping them build their network, they'll be able to continue to use those people and to add to that instead of just like, here's the person we provide for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think we've covered it pretty well.
Well, it's also kind of like how the music industry has changed, you know, since YouTube and things have come about, of where, you know, some of the biggest stars of today, like, you know, Shawn Mendes, Charlie Puth, I think even Taylor Swift, I could be wrong, were like found on YouTube. They had decided they wanted to be their own, you know, make their own channel, sing on it, you know, do whatever they wanted to do. And they just were so excited to be on it that, I mean, now they're known all around the world, where before you wanted to be a music artist, you had to make a demo tape, you had to send it in, and you had to hope that somebody was going to pick up your tape and like you. And where now you can get 1 million followers on YouTube, or, you know, some of them, I don't even know who has the most followers on YouTube, but make a whole bunch of money off of YouTube, you know, producing your own thing where you don't really need anything else.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's like that now for almost every industry. You have a lot of self-starters, and even if you have self-starters that are spending enormous amounts of money, because it's like it scales all over the board. You have people in their basement creating content and like getting big, or you have companies that are crowdfunding through Kickstarter, through internet-based things. But yeah, it's like that through every industry, including this industry that they're working in. So,
well, and I mean, I think that the internet has been a huge thing to change almost every industry, because, like, I mean, I can scroll through Facebook and they do ad matching, to where it drives me absolutely nuts, but I'll search something on Amazon, and then all of a sudden I'll get the ads on the side of Facebook that show that, oh, I just searched those shoes, and then it pops up like 7 different types of shoes that I just searched. So it really customizes you to, you know, kind of go to these things and be intrigued by them. So I think just the whole internet's changed literally everything, even, you know, with the tech market and the venture capitalists and all of that, because you could probably spend very little on marketing just by putting ads on Facebook if people pay attention. And even when you scroll through Instagram, you get sponsors, you know, sponsored by, and somebody pops up and you're like, oh, that kind of looks cool, maybe I'll look at that. Then you click on it. It's like clickbait, but, you know, they make money off of it, and it works.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I would agree with that. Are any other thoughts, or should we move on?
No, let's move on.
I think we can move on.
Okay.
All right. So, sorry. So VC firms compete on their ability to source, pick, win. How does an A16Z's business model influence these abilities compared to other VC firms? And so, first of all, we think of the source part of it, the ability to get founders to come in the door seeking money. How does A16Z treat their founders differ from the traditional treatments? Will this increase, decrease, or have no effect on the number of potential deals or A16Z?
I think with the new firms, they saw potential in their people and they didn't just drop them. They like did follow-up questions with them. Unlike the original ones, it was kind of like you need to make a profit or no, we're just gonna let you go.
Yeah, they kind of give them homework to do and come back and do another presentation to us and show us that you improved on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the first or the original people, they were just based completely off what like data, or I don't even know if it was data, necessarily data, so like what's on paper. Where A16Z, they looked more into like can they improve, how can they become better, which I feel like gave them the upper hand of looking at the positive side of the companies.
Yeah, and I think one big thing that helps them too is they're very client friendly. They want to help the people that they're investing with, not just for their own sakes. I mean, obviously that's their highest priority is the profit, but they do have a very genuine sense, I think, of wanting to help the people that they're funding. And I think they have a very consumer client friendly approach. And that's where the $10 a minute thing comes in. Like they were saying, most big venture capitalist people, they blow off their clients and they come to meetings late and they just make demands or whatever. Whereas these guys, it's like if you meet with a client, if you're late, we're charging you. Like that's getting docked from your pay because we want to show that we respect them, and we want to help them.
Yeah, I thought it was cool. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think it's cool how they. I don't think it's gonna have us talk about this, so I'll just say it. How they kind of pick their people, where the other venture capitalist firms do like a vote, and then you have that, they call them like the silverback that can either veto the decision or be the tiebreaker. But for these guys, like any of their, I can't remember what they call them, their general partners could just either accept a deal or decline a deal. Like they put that trust into their general partners to make that decision as they came across different deals. I thought that was really cool instead of like, oh, well, we all have to agree on it.
Well, I think that's cool too because I think it potentially fosters opportunity because if you have a firm where you have the big executive guy who ultimately makes most of the calls and they have to vote on it and stuff, eventually a culture is going to form in that company. And for a while, it might be optimal, like who knows, but it happens. It's happened before. It'll happen again. You have companies where you have these people in charge that have a certain paradigm, and eventually their paradigm will become outdated. And new opportunities, new things might not be able to flourish because you have people that are set in their ways and that have their ideals that are shutting down opportunities everywhere because they're not seeing the writing on the wall. So I think by having that system where it's like you don't have to have the approval of your other partners, like you can just say yes to opportunities that you see. Sure, it's more of a risk, but I think it also prevents that danger of a toxic, stale culture forming, you know?
Yeah, well, and I feel like a lot of the most successful companies, they allow that freedom. I feel like the more restrictions you put and the more like we have to vote, we have to do this, you're limiting your partners in this situation, their ability to think on their own. You're just kind of saying like either it fits in this bubble or we don't do it at all. But this way, like as an individual, they can say, I see this potential, I'll sign you. You know, even if somebody else might not think that. I mean, I just think I feel like that's key to success is allowing your partners and your employees to have that freedom to make these bigger decisions on their own.
Well, it's kind of like that Shark Tank show too, of where you had those, 3, 4, 5 people sit in front and have the, entrepreneur present, and one person was going to willing to take it on, or sometimes it was multiple people that were willing to take it on. But if you actually see something in somebody that you think, wow, this is really going to work, I just need to kind of smooth out the edges, give them a little bit of encouragement, mentor them, and just in a certain way, and we can really make this a success. But nobody else sees that. That just makes that person work that much harder to help this entrepreneur, the rest of the panel, that I saw this and I made it work, so look at me now, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally agree. I think these are all
right.
points. Okay, I'll read it.
Okay.
Okay, it says, how will this change if A16Z begins to fire CEOs because they are not performing well? Will this increase, decrease, or have no effect on the number of potential deals A16Z sees compared to the competition?
I think this will significantly decrease the deals. That was one of the main issues that the guy with the H's name, that he was so frustrated about, is they had one of their people come in and say, when are you going to get a real CEO?
Right.
And founder, like, was kind of like, well, I founded this company. I think I'll be my own CEO. I think that would very much start pissing your people away, because at that point you're just another venture capitalist. There's nothing. You're taking what sets you apart away.
Yeah, I agree exactly. And I was going to say that that's their differentiator, is that they respect their people and they're willing to risks and potentially crash and burn with some of those risks. But I think that's part of their mentality, is that we're not going to fire these people. We're going to keep them on board. So yeah, I agree. It gets rid of what makes them them, and I think it would decrease their deals.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, they were not the mold of like a traditional,
Yeah.
which I think did help them out.
Yeah, play
Well,
their strengths.
sometimes thinking outside of the box actually makes you more successful, and not being like everybody else that, yeah, they've had success following the line, but sometimes not being on the line actually makes you stand out and more successful, because people respect the fact that you were willing to kind of jump off the ship and try to swim on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else then for that question?
We're good.
Okay. All right, so how does the operating team help A16Z source pick win? Does it increase the odds of getting more high-quality deal flow? If so, why? Does it affect A16Z's ability to pick winners? Does it actually have any impact on the odds of success for A16Z portfolio companies? If so, how? If not, why do you think that? A lot of questions in one.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, so I think we've addressed some of these points already. Tiffany, you talked about the approval thing. I think that's a big part of their operating team, of how they function together.
Mm-hmm.
And that deals with their source picking winning. The idea that they're not beholden to each other as partners. How it kind of provides a more independent, I like this idea, so I'm going to prove it. So I think that aspect of it, we've discussed that pretty well. Ideas.
I don't really know what else to say.
I don't know. We kind of already mentioned it.
We talked a lot about this. I guess also to their network aspect that they talked about earlier, creating a network and having lots of people in that network helping to connect companies into the industry and stuff. That's also part of their operational strategy.
Yeah, it definitely has a positive impact on the odds of them to be able to succeed. Adding that to it. Should we move on?
That's me.
Sure.
I mean, we can keep talking about it, but
Well, no, I think we basically answered that question through all the other answers.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I agree.
All
All
right.
right.
How many more questions are there?
There's
Like
more.
3.
Three.
Three more questions. Oh my gosh.
Well, they're like
Okay.
I think we've killed.
questions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, one more
Like, I
question.
feel like we've killed this case already.
Yeah,
Let's see if there's anything more we need to add to this that we haven't said already. It just says, put yourself in the shoes of Andreessen and Horowitz. You must decide whether or not to seek to double your assets under management. Vote as a group. The decision must be unanimous. Consider the following as you decide. So how many portfolio companies can one general partner reasonably support? Are there any economies of scale in this business? And will you have to hire more operating team people? If so, will the partners actually make more money for doubling their assets, or will all of the additional profits go to hire more people?
It's a complicated question.
Number 1, it was 10, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so the
General partners seem to be able to handle 10
okay.
at a time. Are the economies of scale in this business? I'm pretty sure economies of scale is in everything.
Good point. Yeah.
Yes.
I would probably say yes, because the more companies you're backing, the more return you're getting. So if you're backing one company and getting 8% of their profit or whatever, it's a lot different than backing 50 different companies and getting 8% of all of the revenue. I feel like it kind of combines into a bigger stream.
Yeah. But I personally think that they should, just a second, let me make sure I'm saying this right. I think they should try to double their assets, basically. I think they should try to improve or whatever. Because, I mean, even if they have to hire more people, for every one general partner they add, that's 10 more companies that they're able to receive that revenue from. And even if at first a lot of that is going to hiring, eventually it will pay off. Or, I mean, their company as it is wouldn't work. So if you're doubling all your assets, including all your people, you'd also get a higher income because you'd be able to help significantly more companies or startups.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
And
Okay.
I think they're kind of in a good enough place to do that. You know, that they're able to expand more.
Mm-hmm.
I think they can expand. I think they're in a decent place.
Yeah, I've felt kind of both ways on this question, because I thought on one hand, maybe don't expand because you haven't seen the long-term rewards of their investments yet. They haven't gotten the opportunity to see how all their investments are panning out.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Because it was
one
like within 10 years, right?
Yeah, and I think they had like 4 years or something. The other reason being is that they're already operating pretty well at the size that they have. But on the other hand, even though they haven't seen the long-term rewards of their investments, I think there's enough signs to indicate that things are going pretty well. Like it seems like they have a really good reading on their target market. They have a good reading of how their different approach is appealing to these companies. And it seems like they have a pretty good experienced knowledge of knowing who to back and when. So honestly, I think they could do well both ways, both doubling or just staying the same. I think if they did stay the same, it would be really safe. I don't think they'd have anything to worry about, but they could potentially open up a much bigger opportunity by expanding.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that by not expanding, they may miss opportunities.
Uh-huh.
Because by expanding, they may be able to make their network that much bigger and, you know, open the floodgates to having more and more things.
Okay, well, maybe we should agree then that they should expand. did you have something?
Me?
Were you?
No,
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
Oh, I thought.
I'm just like itching my hand, not raising.
Okay, I thought you were like. Okay. So maybe then let's agree that they should expand. But I guess the big ultimatum question here is, should they expand to new geographies like New York, China, stuff like that, or should they expand into different markets, like different sectors? So instead of just doing tech startups, doing clean tech, biotech, etc., or both.
I voted on my pre-quiz. I voted that they should do more industries, do like the clean tech and the biotech, and stay where they are, just because they put some of the concerns with doing like international sales or working internationally or working in New York. And it seems to be like they're in the perfect location to be doing venture capitalists. But I would expand into similar but different markets. And that might even help just branch out the network that they're already building. I think their biggest
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They're not their market. They need to maintain their culture that they've created, because I know that was something they were worried about. Is it still going to be the same? And I think they need to make sure to maintain that.
Well, and part of the hard part of expanding into different countries is that you're dealing with a different culture, a different mindset, and not just necessarily a culture of the company. You're dealing with the culture of the country. And you kind of have to adjust your business practices to be able to have that. And if they don't want to do that or are not good at it initially, that can cause some problem. Where if they stay in the United States but expand into different markets, they're likely to find and recruit some people that have experience in those markets. And that's probably a safer path to travel.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Tiffany, you said the words similar but different markets. I think that's a good distinction to make, because one of the big things about this company is that one of their huge strengths is that they were tech startup guys and they understand the tech industry. So they're really well equipped with just tech startups. I think that's one of their biggest strengths, is that they do have that knowledge and that they're working in an industry they're really familiar with. So I do think if they expand to more markets, which I think they could do, I think they're smart enough to do it. I think the key is saying what you said, similar but different. And I think the industries they listed are good starts, like biotech, clean tech. I mean, there is a lot of tech that goes into those. I think they should kind of stick with tech maybe type things, and then slowly branch out as they start to get familiar with how other industries work, you know? I don't think it would be a good idea for them to just jump to a totally different industry that's way different. Yeah, I think they're smart enough to handle those kind of things. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Also going to like a different country, there's different rules and regulations and taxes and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
the culture's different.
Yeah, and when you're working with big money and big business, that can definitely make it a lot more complicated.
So we all
should our answer be that?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so double their assets, kind of slowly move into other.
Sorry.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It might have been my computer. Did you say slowly move into other but similar industries? Okay, awesome. All right, I'm gonna stop the timer.
Oh, do we have to do is that the summary?
No, we're still recording. Does someone want to do a summary real fast?
I could do if you guys want.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Recap our general thoughts about the whole thing. Okay. Should I do that now?
Go for it.
Okay. So A16Z, this venture capitalist company, determined that the market that they're entering into is a very difficult and crowded market, which normally wouldn't yield very good opportunities. But they saw special opportunity in that they wanted to run their company very differently. And we decided that because of their unique and innovative approach and being more friendly to the venture capitalist firms and coming from a place where they truly understand the challenges of being a tech startup and respecting the wishes of CEOs to run their own companies, we determined that their innovative approach allowed them to enter an otherwise difficult industry to flourish in. And because of their respect for the companies they worked with, their desire to branch out and create a network instead of just, you know, a big venture capital firm with big money, they were able to reach out to a lot of tech startups and see pretty good success. Regarding their decision to expand or stay the same, we decided that it's in their best interest to double their assets. There's a lot of writing on the wall, like even though they haven't seen the long-term effects of their investments yet, there's a lot of writing on the wall that shows that they're headed in a very positive direction and that they are a good, strong competitor in an industry that's otherwise getting pretty stale in terms of venture capitalism. We determined that they should stick with staying where they are, but branching into similar but different industries, such as the ones listed in the case study, such as biotech, clean tech. Determined that they should double their assets because they're on a good track and, you know, find people that are very experienced and knowledgeable in those fields, and we believe they could flourish.
Awesome. I'm going to stop it.